Okay, so welcome to this second presentation in Module 3, titled Diversity. As a caregiver, you would be working in diverse cultural environments, diverse persons with diverse religious inclinations. So it's essential that you have some foundational knowledge and some foundational understanding of how to navigate the diversity of the various individuals you may be working with. So starting with culture. Culture is a set of behaviors, beliefs, values, attitudes, and goals that are shared by a group of people. Our culture is a powerful part of what makes us who we are and how we live. Groups of people such as families, friends, religious groups, and organizations all share a culture. There's a culture code among the Christians. A common culture code is the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery. That's a culture code that is among the Christians. There's a culture code among Muslims. Having 4 wives, it's not unusual. Now in Christendom, that may be a bit strange. There's a culture code among some families. There's a culture code among organizations. So that's what I meant by culture. So rules in a culture can be expressed by spoken and unspoken ways, such as whether direct eye contact is allowed or is seen to mean something else, or handshaking may be considered appropriate or inappropriate. There are cultures where it's inappropriate for opposite genders to have a handshake. So many characteristics will make up cultures. Most people belong to numerous cultures in view of that. So you may be culturally of the Yoruba group, but then your religious inclination is tending towards the Islamic religious group. So race, spiritual and religious belief, national origin, which is the country that a person comes from, sexual orientation, age make up various cultures. And people often identify themselves or define who they are based on their culture. It's important to remember that we belong to many or a number of cultures in view of what I've said. Your place of origin, the country of birth, your race, your spiritual or religious inclination, your age. There's a culture among the Gen Z. There's a culture among the millennials. There's a culture among the baby boomers. So there are different cultures. So most people belong to a number of cultures. It's also important to remember that one culture is not better than another. And as a health care worker, as a caregiver, you need to try and understand what cultures your patients belong to and what custom within those cultures the person believes in or practices. And this helps you to better understand where your patient is coming from and how to better take care of them. So race is not the same as culture. Race is a sub of culture. Race is a classification of people based on physical attributes or their geographic ancestry, where a person comes from originally, and their inherited characteristics. The Chinese would have a smaller eye. That doesn't nip or specify that a smaller size eye already makes an individual a Chinese. Caucasian will have a more pointed nose. It's just one out of several attributes that would then put together and say this person is from this particular race. In the United States, for example, some races are white Americans, African Americans, Native American, Alaska Native, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. So some people may identify as being multiracial. Someone with a mixed birth, an American father, or an African mother is considered an African American. So a number of people have multiple races, meaning that they have more than one race. And we often identify ourselves as being part of a particular race, but this is not the only aspect of who we are. So at the end of the day, your patient is more than the race. Your patient is more than you're caring for a white American. Your patient is more than you're caring for someone from the Middle East who is from Dubai, for instance. Okay, so it's important to be careful not to judge people by their race or what you think their race is. This is called racism. Racism is a belief that one racial group is better than another racial group, or that one member of a race is the same as all other members of the race, same race. So that you cared for an 80-year-old man in Dubai, and then you get to care for another 60-year-old man still in the same Dubai. It will be racism to assume that your new 60-year-old elderly patient would have the same thought patterns, belief system, way of life as your 80-year-old patients did. So you can't copy and paste the same treatment plan, the same interactions, the same template you used for the last one with the new one. That would be considered racism in some way. So racism is based on a person's religion, nationality, or country of origin. Racism results in prejudice against a particular race. Okay. Now, ethnocentrism, diversity, and stereotypes. In working with others, we must be careful in ethnocentrism, and that is thinking that your culture and beliefs are superior to or better than another's. Or as an African who has the privilege of having a very closely knit family system, and then you work with a white American family whose family is quite individualistic, it will be ethnocentric for you to assume that because they're quite individualistic without a very closely knit family system, that your own African race is superior to theirs. All of our cultures are equally important. No one culture is better than another. The various cultures essentially brings diversity to the world. If there are so many of a particular culture, eventually it becomes boring. So diversity means including and respecting different types of culture, and we must also be careful of stereotypes. Stereotypes are when you believe that all groups, all people within a group are the same based on what you know about one individual within that group. Example of the 80-year-old Dubai man and the 60-year-old Dubai man. Okay, so stereotypes can be about any characteristic of a person, such as their looks, their sexual orientation, their weight, or their behavior. And we often learn stereotypes from media and from our family as we're growing up. For example, until recently, it was believed that all women should stay at home to cook, to clean, and care for their children. That was a stereotype, which does not play out across board in the various communities, the cultures, and the races of the world. As a result, people may have stereotypes about women, such as all women are good cooks, but women should be secretary and men the bosses. Truth is, stereotypes are very harmful to people. They can make people feel misunderstood and not respected. So it's important to become aware of the stereotypes you have about others so that you do not make a patient feel that they are not respected or valued. Now, it's essential that you have some form of self-awareness if you're going to go into the craft of caregiving. First, at least on this topic of diversity, take a moment to think about what makes up your own culture. What groups do you consider to be important to you? What roles do you play in your own life? Now, are you a mother? Are you a father? Are you a daughter? Are you a grandson? Are you a granddaughter? Are you a son? Do you have religious or spiritual beliefs that you practice? Do you have traditions and rituals in your family that are important to you? How do you identify yourself? Truth is, your culture is a part of who you are. It has helped to shape your beliefs, your values, and your attitude over the years. And you bring it everywhere with you. And the truth is, you bring your culture to work, consciously or unconsciously, and it will influence how you understand and care for your patients. So it's important for you to engage in self-reflection in order to be able to understand yourself better. And it is in understanding your own beliefs and your own way of thinking that you'll be able to better understand people and appreciate the beliefs of others, in this case, your patients, most importantly. And this will better help you to care for your patients as you continue your career of caregiving. Cultural awareness and competence. Cultural awareness means how aware you are about the value and belief of other cultures. It also means how much you appreciate the various aspects of different cultures. Becoming culturally aware is a lifelong journey. It's nearly impossible to know all the customs and beliefs of every culture in the world. So what is important for healthcare workers is to strive to learn as much as they can about the varieties of culture in any world, in our world, because really you would, as a caregiver, come in contact with quite a whole lot of different cultures and personalities. So for each patient that you work with, ask them to tell you about their cultural beliefs and practices. In this way, you'll be learning about all the different cultures and working to better understand and care for your patients. Your cultural competence goes along with your cultural awareness. And it means is your ability to incorporate your cultural awareness into your healthcare practice. It means understanding and respecting your patient's cultural beliefs, working with them in a way to demonstrate that you respect and honor these beliefs. For example, if your patient likes to pray before eating meals, as the caregiver, you want to provide support to their prayer prior to the meals. It may even mean that you would remind them, so Ma, are you going to pray before? Or sir, are you going to pray before? Okay? And the more you become aware of the different cultures, the more you will learn to appreciate the differences and the more culturally competent you become. Now, culture. Africa is a continent that has dozens of different tribes, ethnics, cultural groups with hundreds of different languages and dialects. A person that says I'm African, if they live in or come from one of the black African countries, that someone says is African doesn't really tell you much. Keeping in mind that there are gazillions of culture and dialects and languages until you sit and ask the person to tell you about them, tell you about their culture. That's when you'll be able to understand your client and serve them better. So the term black is usually defined as people descend from an African country. So African American can be defined as blacks who are born in the United States, but their roots, they descended from the African continent. So depending on the family and the cultural values and belief, people may prefer one term over the other as a way to identify themselves. So learn the term a patient chooses to use to identify themselves. You don't just impose based on your own prior assumptions, which may be correct or very wrong. So it's important to remember that people cannot be defined by their skin color, as there are a variety of skin tones from light to dark people who define themselves as African American. The African Americans who are almost as light skinned as the white Americans. So it's important to exercise caution and seek clarity from your patients in that light. Now, remember that a shared complexion does not necessarily mean that there's a shared culture. So that you also find two people share the same complexion is not a go ahead to assume that you treat that person the way you treated Mr. A because they share the same complexion and you assume automatically they are from the same cultural origin. So it's important to find out the terms a patient used to describe their identity so you can use the same with them. The structure of the African American family would often include extended family and people outside of the biological family. The truth is, the African American family has so many aunties, so many uncles, so many mommies, so many daddies. So in such a situation, you have to ask questions to be able to understand the relationship, to be able to make an informed healthcare decision and an informed interaction. Elders are highly respected. The woman often takes the matriarchal role. Decisions are often made by either the mother or the father. And families tend to avoid placing loved ones in a long-term care facilities because I said earlier they have a very close, knitted family relationship. And instead they want to care for such people by family members within the home. Again, African Americans often have a very strong tie to religious community, and many of them will have a Christian faith or follow the Islamic religion. And it's important to find out your patient's religious or spiritual belief and to honor this. Now, during times of illness and impending death, many African Americans will turn to their faith. And it's often important for extended families and friends to gather together around their loved ones during times of imminent death. That's death that is likely to happen soon. And here you have a caregiver explaining a medication to an elderly African American woman. Now, Asians, the term Asian is a general term for different cultures that originate in the Asian country. People who consider themselves to be Asian may be Pacific Islanders from Hawaii, Samoa, or Guam, Southeast Asian from India, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Burmese, and Philippines, and East Asians from China, Japan, and Korea. Each of these cultures have many different beliefs, norms, and traditions. It's important not to generalize from one Asian culture to the next. Get to know your patients again, their beliefs, and their customs. And here is an Asian woman. Just looking at this woman, there's no way you can say she's either from Cambodia, or she's from Thailand, or she's from Japan. The facial look does not say much until you interact with your clients and know who she is, her culture, her religious preferences, and the likes. So generally speaking, Asians tend to be group and family oriented. This is known as a collectivist culture, different from the typical individual oriented culture in the United States. Decisions and actions are made by a group of people, and again, even as they make such decisions, they have a consideration to the effect on the whole group. Loyalty is very important to the family and family members. So behaviors are a reflection of the honor and respect that is shown to the family, and decisions are often made with the effect on the family in mind. So decisions are not made with just your patient in mind. It is how will this decision have a ripple effect on the whole family. So it may take a while for them to come to a conclusion. Please be patient, even with the smallest of healthcare needs, that a decision is needed. Okay. So decisions are often made with the effects of the whole family in mind. Self-control is important. So expression of intense emotions, such as crying, yelling, pain or grief may not be shown. Now, this is important because when you're caring for the elderly patient who already has a programming of not crying, not yelling, not feeling pain, you have to be sensitive that your patient is not yelling or expressing intense emotion does not mean the elderly patient is not feeling discomfort. So it requires you to have a sixth sense of awareness when caring for such patients. And many people from the Asian culture are not in direct conversation. Usually they don't talk directly to each other. They see such as rudeness. And many Asian people will smile when they are confused or embarrassed. Now you can take that in error as a sign that the person is pleased with what you're doing or the person understands what you're doing. And many people in Asian culture will also nod during conversation. Again, you can mistake this to mean that you understand what you're doing or they're enjoying what it is you're doing. So it's important to seek clarification. So you want to be sure that your patient truly understands what it is or the situation on ground. For many, Asians will pay careful attention to non-verbal cues during conversations, such as your gesture, your tone of voice, your eye contact, even your silence. They pay attention to it. So, like I said earlier, it's important you bring your body, mind, and soul to work. It's important to remember to pay attention to non-verbal cues to you as the caregiver and to try to understand those that are being conveyed by your patients. Much of the meaning of what is being conveyed can be found in the non-verbal cues rather than in verbal words. In Asian patients, they don't talk, they are not as verbose and as most of the other ethnic groups. Many Asians believe in fatalism or believe that nothing can be done about a situation or one's health care. They believe it's decided by fate or karma. And this can make them appear to be resigned to situations. It's important to take care when you're discussing a healthcare situation or disease with them and be careful how you present it. Then many Asian cultures will focus on holistic aspect of the body, treating the body and the mind. Western medicine tend to focus only on the body. So Asian cultures may use herbal remedies, acupuncture, and the likes. So as a caregiver in such a setting, it's important to have acute understanding and a good tolerance of what is going on. So why it's important to respect and honor the cultural practices. It's also important that you know what practices are being used. So you're not in the limbo as to some effects that your patient may then encounter that will be passed on to you as a caregiver. So now, Latino means a person whose origins are from the Spanish-speaking countries such as Caribbean, Mexico, South Africa, and Central America. Latinos often have a very deep sense of family connection called familismo. And family members would include extended members of the family and close friends whom they trust. Generally, they are slow to trust outsiders. So even as the caregiver, you may feel like an outcast initially until they come to trust you. Family members, including extended members of the family, such as grandparents, aunts, uncles, may be involved in the healthcare of the patients and may want to be present to make healthcare decisions. Do not be shocked if you do find this. So it's important to include all the members of the family during your healthcare decision making and care provision. It will help them build trust with you, and they will be more willing to work with you in the future. Latinos are very focused on relationships. So it's important that you as the caregiver take time during the provision of care, demonstrate warmth, you give some more loving touch, demonstrate concern, be friendly, and then have a sense of confidence in yourself, confidence in the relationship and the rapport you're building with your patient and the family. They feel a great respect for physicians and generally healthcare providers, even as a caregiver. And they believe in the importance of respect, which they call respect. So they may not want to question what you do. So it's important you communicate with them. Then many of them would also prefer to be addressed formally as Mr. or Mrs. Then the oldest member of the family has the greatest power, and decisions are usually deferred to him. Then they also believe in fatalism, just as Asians do, which means there's little they can do to alter the course of their fate. So this may lead to them delaying treatment or seeking or health-seeking behavior. That could also mean that you're caring for them, but because they already have this fatalistic mindset, they may not complain of discomfort until it gets really bad. So it requires that you have a high index of suspicion and be able to pick out things even before your patient complains, because they will probably complain very late. Okay, and here's a picture of an elderly Latino couple. You looking at them, tell me, are they from Mexico or Cambodia? Okay, so Middle East, countries that are associated with the Middle East traditionally will include Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and Yemen, just to name a few. It's more than that. People from the Middle East traditionally will have a strong sense of affiliation with their family. Families and friends may be close-knit and involved in the healthcare of the patient, with the eldest member of the family expecting to be involved in healthcare decisions. Because of the close connection among those considered to be part of the patient's close-knit family, members of the family may have doubts about the intentions of the healthcare provider and may need reassurance again and again about having the family members be taken care of. So they would often prefer same-sex caregiver. So if you're going to care for a female, chances are they want a female to come. If you're going to care for a man, they probably also want a man to come. Direct eye contact with members of the opposite sex is frowned upon. So you as a female caregiver who is caring for the elderly woman, the grandma of the family, and then there's a grandson who is about your age, direct eye contact is frowned upon. They touch more frequently, same sex, and tend to have a closer personal space during conversation than from the Western culture. But you want to take care to remember the gender differences. Then Middle Easterners may also follow special diets, and they may not eat certain food together at the same meal. They may have foods called hot and cold. It's important to be aware of such. They may resist going to the hospital as they see it as a place where people go to die. So you may have your elderly patient who really needs to go to the hospital. If you sense such resistance, do not be shocked. Just see it as culture playing out. It's not your place as the health care provider, the caregiver, to be able to encourage, cajole, just try to see how you can do everything possible to encourage them to go to the hospital for health care. Okay, they may also be concerned that their loved one will not be cared for after death according to religious customs. So, and in the event of any death, mourning is often very loud with great emotion expressed. They see this as a sign of respect. It's also the same in the African culture. And here is a picture of a Middle Eastern family. Looking at them again, just by looking at this, you can't tell me this is from Iraq or Iran or Kuwait. It could be from any of such places, but you can look categorically and say this is an individual from the Middle East. It's for you to now interact with them and ask, so you're from where? Tell me about your culture, tell me about your religious beliefs. Now, religion. There are numerous religion and spiritual beliefs. Religious beliefs includes people's values, morals, behaviors, and tradition. Religion may be important to some people and unimportant to others. Some people consider themselves to be spiritual, but may not practice or be affiliated with any particular religions. And other people do not believe in any religion of God. Only some of the more common religions are discussed here. So remember, even if a patient practices one of the religions discussed, they may or may not adhere to the beliefs or practices described. So always ask your patient what their individual beliefs and practices are. Agnostics and atheists. Agnostics are people who do not know if there is a God. They are neither here nor there. They do not necessarily think that God does not exist, but they feel God's existence cannot be proven. So they are more of the scientific-minded kind of person. Atheism, on the other hand, is the belief that there is no God. Atheism is not a belief system or a religion. Atheism is not a disbelief in God or a denial of God. It is a lack of belief in God and supernatural system. And for many atheists, their beliefs are strong as those who believe in a particular religion or specific God and gods. So the agnostic does not believe or disbelieve in a higher power. They are just there. Almost like an entity that doesn't exist to them, the concept of religion. Now, atheists are those, they do not believe that there is any God or a higher power. So they are like anti-religion. For agnostics, it's like there's no concept called religion. For atheists, is that they are against it. Okay. Now, Buddhism is based on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, known as Buddha. While their religion started in Asia, it is practiced worldwide. Buddhists believe in the four noble truths. One is that suffering exists. Two is that there is a cause to the suffering. Three is that there is an end to the suffering. And four is that there is a way to bring the suffering to the end. Desiring material belongings, immortality, and pleasures, they believe will lead to suffering. And for them to end the suffering in their own belief, they believe one must achieve nirvana, which is a state of spiritual heightening in which there is no desire or suffering. And to achieve this, Buddhists believe that they must follow the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So they practice meditation, they practice good moral conduct with the aim of achieving insights to follow the path. They see death as the ending of the physical body, and they believe the spirit will live on in a new form, or a rebirth will occur. Now, should you get to care for a Buddhist, if a person dies, usually the body is left untouched for 3 to 8 hours because they believe the individual spirit would linger for some time. And these are two Buddhist monks. Now, Christianity is the world's largest religion and is based on the teachings of Jesus Christ, who lived 2,000 years ago. Christians believe that Jesus was the Son of God who was sent to earth to save humans from the consequences of their sins. Important holidays in Christendom is Easter and Christmas. Christians believe that Jesus gave his life on the cross via crucifixion, which occurs on Good Friday, and that he rose on the third day, resurrection, which is the Easter Sunday. Christians will mark the birth of Jesus at Christmas. The Holy Book is called Bible and consists of the Old Testament and the New Testament. Most Christians worship in church and communicate with God through prayer. Christians believe in baptism, which is a process in which a formal commitment is made to God. And here's a picture of the Bible and the cross. Hinduism is largely practiced in India. It is the world's oldest religion. There's no founder. There are 4 sects or divisions of Hinduism: Shaivism, Shaktism, Vaishnavism, Smartism. Each has some different beliefs and practices, but all believe in one supreme being who is the creator of all things. Hindus follow the 4 Vedas, which are the ancient scriptures. They also believe in reincarnation, which is the belief that the soul reincarnates or returns after the physical body has died into a new body, because they believe it helps karma to get resolved. And karma is the belief that consequences are caused by actions and that people create their own destinies by their thoughts and actions. Hindus believe that all life is sacred. Many of them may be vegetarians. After the death of a person who practices Hinduism, usually the body is bathed, is massaged with oil, is dressed, then it's cremated. By cremation, I mean it's burnt prior to the next sunrise. And this is an Hindu temple. Islam is the second largest religion in the world. It began in Mecca, Arabia, over 1,400 years ago. People who practice Islam are called Muslims. And prophets of this religion include Adam, Moses, Abraham, David, Jesus, and the final prophet to whom credit for the start of Islam is given is called Muhammad. So Muslims they believe in one God called Allah. Many Muslims who pray 5 times per day, facing Mecca, their holy city. Mosques are their places of worship. Outside of mosque is a place for people to leave their shoes and to wash prior to entering to pray. Prayer is done sitting on the floor and facing the direction of Mecca. Mostly men will attend prayer services in mosque. When women do, they pray in a separate section from the men. And the Quran, which is the sacred word of God as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, is the holy book of Islamic faith. And this is an Islamic lady wearing a niqab, and that is an Islamic man behind her. Judaism originated in Middle East over 3,500 years ago and was founded by Moses, although most Jews trace their history back to Abraham. Abraham was a leader appointed by God and was the first to teach that there was only one God. The Torah, written in Hebrew, which is the oldest Jewish language, is the religious book of the Jew and consists of 5 books of Moses. Jewish people believe that God dictated the words found within the Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai after the Jews were exiled from their slavery in Egypt. The Torah is read in completion every year during synagogue or temple, which is where the Jewish people attend services. And here is a Jewish boy with the Torah and his Jewish cap. Judaism. Still, a rabbi usually will conduct services and serve as a religious leader for Jewish people. The Torah contains 613 commandments by which the Jews live their life. Judaism is divided into reforms, conservative, and orthodox movements, all with some differences in practice and beliefs. In Orthodox Judaism, men and women sit separately in synagogues and services are conducted in ancient Hebrew. Some Jewish men wear a yarmulke or kippah, a small cap to cover their head, the one I showed earlier. Their holy day is called Sabbath, which begins at nightfall on Friday and lasts until nightfall on Saturday. Okay, so now with this, it goes to show that the world is a very diverse place. You cannot make assumption of your patient's culture, religious inclination, beliefs, thought patterns without first interacting with such patients. So as a caregiver, it's important you interact with your patient, ask them to tell you about them so that you can make informed decision as to how you interact with them and converse with them. So thank you for staying with me to the end of this lecture and wish you a wonderful day. Bye.